As the old lady next door used to say, never eat the biscuit from the bottom of the barrel, because you never know what dwells within its depths. Usually there's some kind of little creature, like an aardvark or a haddock or something, lurking in there, just among the crumbs, and the bottom biscuit does tend to pick up a little bit of residue, just a little bit that's fallen off of all the other biscuits. So you may think, well, there's going to be a myriad of flavours cascading into my taste buds at 1,000 miles an hour, but be wary, you may also pick up whatever remains from unwanted substances in there. It's not a pretty sight. If you were to put that biscuit under a microscope, I think you would be quite horrified indeed. So it's not something you should probably do. And if you're going to use a microscope to look at a biscuit though, there is a couple of things that you have to remember. First of all, make sure you have the biscuit the right way up. For example, if the biscuit was lying in the bottom of the barrel face up, and you look at the top of the biscuit, then you're mainly going to be seeing the crumbs of other biscuits that have fallen onto it. Whereas if you look at the bottom side of the biscuit, then you're going to be seeing whatever was lingering on the bottom of the tub before that biscuit even entered. So you're going to get a lot of much older particles, typically, if you're looking at the underside of the biscuit. That's always something I remember. That's very important. Another thing, if you're looking at a biscuit through a microscope, you have to be careful that you're using the right kind of microscope, because there's a few different kinds. There's the kind of microscopes that you want to use if you're looking at DNA and so on, and there's the kind where they don't need to be quite so powerful. You just want to look at, let's say, the crumbs on a biscuit, which is what they're pretty much designed for. So you want to make sure you're using one of those microscopes and not one that was designed for DNA, because if you're getting into the molecular structure of a biscuit, you're not going to be able to see exactly what you're looking for. It's going to be a little too detailed, and the uneducated eye, the untrained eye, if you will, isn't going to be able to pick up the subtle intricacies of the inner workings of the molecules of that biscuit. You need to have a slightly bigger picture, otherwise you're not going to be able to tell exactly what it is you're looking at, and you want to avoid that, certainly, as I often do. That's what I typically tell people when I'm advising them on this particular topic. Another thing, with the actual barrel itself, it's very important to consider what the biscuit barrel was made from, because if it's wood, then you will find that in the fine grains there will be little creatures lurking within there that will occasionally find their way onto the biscuit. That's something you've really got to keep a close eye on, not through the microscope necessarily, because you can probably tell what a biscuit barrel is made of without any kind of visual aid, unless of course you are vision impaired in some way, in which case a pair of glasses will probably suffice. But if you're using a metal tin, then the only thing you really have to worry about is rust. So it depends what kind of metal you're using really, because obviously some metals do not rust, so you'd be perfectly safe there. So you probably want to look around the inside corners where a little bit of moisture may have built up, and if you don't see any rust, then you're probably on the runway to success, I would say, in those circumstances. There are a couple of other materials, of course, that you can have biscuit barrels made from. Plastic, for one, which is very hard wearing. It keeps a lot of the worries that you might have at bay, certainly. And there is a material that I haven't seen employed very often in biscuit barrels, but you do have to keep in mind it is out there. And we're talking about chicken wire. Now, yes, it's a kind of metal. It is a metal, and we have already gone over metal biscuit barrels, but these are quite different, because like wood, they will allow entry for small little creatures, and in fact even bigger kind of creatures, because it's not just the fine holes between the grains you're looking into here. These are like big holes in the wire. This is just designed to keep chickens out, nothing smaller than a chicken. So if it's smaller than chicken, potentially it could have been crawling all over your biscuits, and that's just not something that I'm willing to accept as a risk. It's not acceptable for me. So I don't personally use that in my biscuit barrels, but you may want to. You're free to do that if you want. You're free to do whatever you like when it comes to storing your own biscuits, but I will tell you, they will go stale in that environment. There's no two ways about it, unless you've got some kind of internal wrapping. If they're individually wrapped, for example, the biscuits, I know a lot of them do come that way now in this day and age, because people do like to have their food individually wrapped, so that when you open up the packet you then don't have to reseal it to keep the freshness in. Just the next one down will have its own separate wrapping, so you don't have to worry about having freshness clips or keeping it in an airtight storage container like Tupperware, for instance. You don't have to worry about any of that malarkey. But the one thing that she did tell me is that when you've actually eaten the biscuit already, there's not a lot you can do. You can't un-eat the biscuit, she used to say. She used to apply that saying to a lot of different facets of life, and it rings true even to this day with me. It's something I'll never forget. I try to live my life by those words. It's more difficult than it may seem, because of course hindsight is 2020, and she did die at age 76, so a little bit tricky. But anyway, that's the gist of it. I hope you've been able to take something on board the vessel of life, which is your mind, and you'll carry that forward to improve the quality of what few years you have left. So, thanks for listening.